In today's video we are discussing the S30. This blender is to date the lone member of the S series line of home use Vitamix blenders. They call it the personal blender, and that might be obvious as to why. It occupies a much smaller blender than do the traditional Vitamixes. I've got it sitting next to a next generation. This is the Pro 750. You can see that it's much smaller. This is roughly 8.5 pounds, whereas something like this would come in at 12.5 pounds. Obviously, it is it's right just under 15 inches. Will fit underneath your cabinets, and it's portable enough to light enough where you could throw it in a duffel bag for an overnight trip or take on vacation, something along those lines. With the blender, you get two containers sitting in the motor base. Now you see the standard container. This is the 40-ounce container. It comes with a two-part lid that you're familiar with, including a center plug that pops out so that you can implement a tamper tool if you need to. This tamper, by the way, is the very same one that comes with the next generations. And it also comes with a second 20-ounce container. This is not only a blending vessel, but it doubles as a to-go tumbler as well. This is a double insulated wall. It'll keep your cold things cool longer, your hot things warm longer, and it has a flip top lid so that you can drink straight out of the tumbler. I'll show you how this works in just a second. Along with the blender, you get a 5-year warranty, very nice recipe book, and both containers all come standard with the S30. Now I'm not going to do a comparison video today. There's really no reason to compare it to other Vitamixes. It's really in a class of its own. There's also no reason to compare it to other bullet style blenders, in my opinion. And this is the reason why. This blender is going to appeal to a very specific consumer. I've spent about 8 weeks with it. I do like the blender, but I have formed some fairly strong opinions on it. If all you wanted was a bullet style travel blender, this is not the machine for you. The price point on this machine is roughly $400. If you want just any typical bullet style blender that will do your blending in the vessel that you take with you, go out and spend $100 or less. There's plenty of them out there. On the other hand, if all you care about for your blender is just having the Vitamix name behind it, you want something that's American made and you know is probably going to last, this is probably also not the blender for you, because for the same price point, or maybe just a little bit more, you can get a significantly stronger Vitamix, as well as one that has a longer track record of performance. This particular blender, in my opinion, after using it for a couple of months now, is going to appeal to the person who wants both the portability and the Vitamix name standing behind it. It is unique in that regard. It's an expensive blender, but it doesn't pack all the punch of the really expensive Vitamix blenders. That does not mean it's not nice. I'm going to show you in a minute that in fact it is. It's just there's going to be very specific criteria that are going to have to apply to you before you're going to want to invest in this blender. So what we're going to do today is I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how to use it. I'll point out some caveats that I've discovered along the way, and then we're going to put it to the test. This is a Vitamix blender, and it is a pricey one, so we're going to load it up with some tough ingredients and see just how well it performs. To use this blender, you're going to first choose your container. What makes it unique one reason that makes it unique from other Vitamix blenders is the blade base is actually detachable. There's your blade. Comes on the base. It's threaded here along with the container itself, and you're going to want to screw it on to the threads, and it will only go into this motor base one way. The way you know that you've got it insecure is on the user panel. The start or the home setting is illuminated. It's a round circle that's illuminated. If you have this container out, or if you have it improperly seated, this illuminated light will flash. Not only that, the machine will not come on. It won't let you use it. So there are some very nice safety features with this machine. If you're using the standard container, it's only going in one way. The handle will be facing forward. It's got some notches here the blender will slide into, and when it's ready to go, this illuminated light will be solid. Likewise, if you wanted to use the 20-ounce to-go tumbler, use the motor base, you take the tumbler, you load your contents in from the top, take your blade base, again, it threads on, and you invert it into the motor base, and again, when it's ready to go, the start light will be, the round start light will be solid instead of flashing. That's really all there is to it. After each use, you are going to want to disassemble it and clean it very well. 3 parts, in addition to the lid, there are 3 parts that you're going to want to make sure you clean very well. Obviously, the container, the blade base, and then there are rubber gaskets that also come with it. These are very important. You are going to want to make sure that these are clean after every use, and you're also going to want to make sure that they are properly fitted on the blade base prior to each use. And the reason is because this is a threaded connection. Contents will attempt to work their way down through the threads and escape. If you don't have this gasket on there, it will still work, but you will be looking at a mess to clean up when you're finished. It's happened to me a couple of times, so don't feel like an idiot if it happens to you. Vitamix has already taken that into consideration with the motor base. If you happen to have a leak, something comes out, it actually has a drainage hole in the top. Anything that goes in that's not supposed to be there liquid-wise will come out the drain hole. It also makes for easy cleaning if you need to get in there and actually clean that out. That is one of the caveats, though, about this machine. It is important. It's easy to clean, but you're going to have to do some disassembling. You want to take the blade base off, you're going to want to pop the lid off, and clean very well that way. It's not a big deal. With any Vitamix model, you're cleaning the lid. Once you disassemble the blade base, the container is actually really simple to clean because there's nothing here. You can just rinse this out. You don't even have to clean it the traditional way if you don't want to. But you are going to want to make sure you clean the blade base very well every time, including these gaskets. And I don't mean just wiping around the gasket. I mean taking the gasket off and cleaning it, because residue will collect along these gaskets if you just simply leave it on the blade base. To that, it brings up another caveat. Because this blade base is detachable, after using the blender, the drive shaft, this little guy right here that goes into the motor base, this is the same drive shaft that you'll find on the more traditional models. This thing gets very hot. It gets hot on all blenders, but because you're never actually needing to access that part of the container when you're cleaning it, it's never an issue on just about any other Vitamix container. But because you have to detach this guy in order to clean it, your fingers will come in close proximity to this drive shaft. And if you happen to touch it, it's going to get you. It will burn. So be very careful. It only took once for me to learn to be careful, but because you're washing it, drying it, your fingers do come a lot closer to this drive shaft than they would on another Vitamix. So be very careful about that. clean it very well, dry it very well, and it's going to perform well for you. A couple other quick caveats. These are very minor, but I do want to point them out because they're a little bit different than what you would see with a typical Vitamix. This model plugs in and it does not have an on-off switch. This illuminated light that we've been discussing so far comes on as soon as you plug it in. Now with every other Vitamix model, there is either no light at all, nothing to light up when you plug it in, or like in the next generations, it comes with an on-off switch. So you can simply, if you don't want to see it lit up, turn it off while keeping it plugged in. As long as this guy is plugged in, this light will flash. Now it's not a big deal in daylight, but when it gets dark and it's just sitting in your kitchen, plugged in, this guy flashes on and off. It's not a huge deal, but it kind of bothers me that there's no way to get around this other than unplugging the machine. I will say overall what this does as far as letting you know that your container is properly seated and ready to use, I will say overall this is a good thing, but if you want it to go away, if you don't want it to flash, the only way to keep that from happening is to unplug the machine from the socket. And speaking of the socket and the cord, this is also the only Vitamix machine where the cord itself does not hide. With the next generations and the 5200, any unused portion of the cord can be stored underneath the motor base. Really neat. Only as much cord as you need to reach from the blender to the socket can be extended, whereas this guy, the whole entire length of the cord is always exposed. Now you can wrap this up with a band or a rubber band or a twist tie if you don't want it to occupy so much of your counter space, or if it's getting in your way. But that's just one other minor thing to consider. Okay, we're not going to compare it to a bullet. We're not going to compare it to the next generation. Like I said, this thing stands on its own. It caters to a specific Vitamix customer, but regardless, you're going to want to make sure that it works well. So let's put it to the test. We're going to do a frozen fruit smoothie, and we're going to use a lot of frozen fruit. This is 1 horsepower, 790 watts. It is nowhere near as strong as a typical Vitamix, but you are going to, for $400 or roughly $400, you're going to want to make sure it works, and you're going to want it to do what you want it to do. So we're going to do a frozen fruit smoothie. While we do this, I will, if I can remember, I'm going to do a decibel test. I'll let you hear how loud it is in use, and let's get right to it. We're going to do a whole banana. This is fresh spinach. Do a nice big handful of this. This is about 2 tablespoons of whole flax, which I like. This is exactly 5 ounces of water. This is personal preference. You can use more or less if you want. And let me get the frozen fruit. This is a frozen fruit medley. It's got strawberries, frozen strawberries, honeydew, peaches, blueberry, I believe. And this is 2 full cups. This is about as packed as you're going to want to make your smoothies in a 40-ounce vessel. Okay, we'll put our lid on. Now the user interface on the S30 is very simple. You've got the start mode, and you've got 10 variable speeds. That's it. Choose 1 to 10. When you turn it, it will run as long as you leave it running. When you're ready for it to stop, turn it back to start. It does have a pulse mode. If you turn it to the left, it will pulse on medium speed for as long as you hold the lever over towards the pulse button. And when you're through, you always put the center dial back on the illuminated start button. That's it. There are no pre-programmed cycles, no levers to worry about. It's just one center dial. Now, because these are smaller containers, and you're probably going to need to use your tamper more often than you might with a more powerful machine with a larger jar. That's just the way it is. Vitamix includes the tamper because it's good to use when you need it. Don't be scared to use it. Don't be scared to really use it forcefully if you need to. That's what it's for. And that's really all there is to it. We've got the blade facing forward. The center light is solid, which means this thing's ready to go. I already know, just because of the size of the smoothie and the frozen ingredients that we are blending today, that I'm going to need the tamper, so I'm going to get that ready. We're going to turn it on, and we're just going to let it run until I feel like the consistency is where we need it to be. I will take a decibel reading too while it's running and show you just how loud this is. You can compare that reading to those on other tests that we've done in other videos. Okay, here we go, the S30 at work. And there we go. You might not have been able to see it, but it really did need to run about that long just to fully incorporate. You can use the tamper strategically to help it along. But here we go. We've got a nice smooth final blend. It looks really smooth. Hopefully you can see that. I had some strawberries in there. There are no seeds. All the flax is nicely ground. It really did a nice job. And that was not an insignificant ingredient content load. We used a lot of frozen fruit in that. We filled that thing to the rim, and it did perform. Let me give it a quick taste test. Well, it is delicious. There is a little bit of texture there. You can always let it run longer. You used a lot of frozen fruit in that smoothie, so there's no problem with letting it go a little longer. You can make it as smooth as you want just by letting it run longer. Just keep an eye on it. You don't want it to get too runny or heat up too much. But there you have it. That's a quick overview of the Vitamix S30, a nice little blender that will cater to a specific Vitamix customer.